Oh, yeah. Because down south, there's other Christian takes care of the groceries down there. There's really a certain amount of groceries out there. You just things, and that grocery stock is way less than now. They don't even use but that's the way I see it. So look at, we've done all kinds of things. All kinds of things. Well, that's true. That was 2 years ago, the last 2 years. And I mean, I'll just argue. Yes. And well, it's even a little bit on there. Yeah, it's such a loss. They don't stay up. I think often the slightest they can go. One. I manage that river right. So all I'm is and I will tell you, and I could probably use it.
Get started here. If you didn't notice, there are several handouts by the door. You can get a copy of those, you can find them there. Oh, I do. I'm just giving us a minute to settle in here. My name is Marlene Wagner. I'm the Wilson Bay and Grace Garber Fisheries Policy Lead for the agency. You may have seen me on screen before, but I don't think any of you have met me in person yet. So nice to meet you. Welcome. And so we are also recording this. So there are people that have joined us online. For those of you online, we don't have a capabilities to be taking questions this evening from the online audience, but you will be able to hear people in person asking questions, and you can always hit us up afterwards with any comments or questions you might have. Mark, are you going to make the screen so we don't have some of this distraction on?
Bye, Marlene.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ready?
Great, thank you.
Next slide.
So again, welcome everybody. We're really happy you're here. We're really happy to be in person again. This is our kickoff regional meeting for the 2023 North Vulcan process. So tonight, we're going to kind of do what we normally do. We're going to do staff introductions and the meeting purpose. We're going to go through the North Vulcan process and the administrative procedure act process. And then we're going to introduce you to the 2023 forecasts for Willapa Bay, Grace Harbor, Fleets, and Canal Rivers, and then go over our management objectives for this year. So we have a lot of these people in the room tonight. Maybe you can just give a wave when I call your names. We're kind of two teams that work together here. We have CY San Francisco team and a Region 6 San Francisco team. So on the statewide side, we have Kyle Adams as our intergovernmental staff manager. Mark Welchel right here, our state and skill manager. Me, Marlene Becker, South Coast Commissioner Policy Lead. We have Barb McClellan right there, our Willapa Bay and Great Harbor Great Recreational Biologist. And over in the region, we have James Losey, our Region 6 Fish Program Manager. Mike Clark, our Great Harbor District Biologist. And Henry Whitmer, Great Harbor Area Biologist. But we also have Kim Barnes. And we have leading up Willapa Bay is Cody Polk. And under her is Nick Van Buster, who's replacing Lyle Jennings as our Willapa Bay area biologist.
Right.
Next slide, please. Okay, so tonight again, we're going to introduce.
Hey, Mark, you muted the audio.
So North Vulcan is just the annual cooperative process used to set salmon seasons in Washington waters. The name refers to Oregon's Cape Vulcan, which marks the southern border of Washington's management of salmon stocks. And it's just one component of a larger salmon setting process that also involves state, tribal governments, federal regulators, and other US states, as well as Canada. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into North Vulcan and guiding it. So as managers, we have to weigh a lot of factors in setting a salmon season that include any Endangered Species Act constraints, which fortunately we don't have here, and commissioners' policies, Pacific Salmon Treaty obligations, tribal co-management. So of course we're splitting harvest with the tribes. And we include a lot of evaluation of the extensive monitoring we do for our statewide fisheries. Next slide, please. So I think this is pretty hard to see, but it's a really nice graphic that's on our website. And I just wanted to plug the website. There's a link here that you got in an email, I think yesterday. And there's just a really big wealth of information there. So if you have any questions when you're just thinking about salmon this spring and this process,
refer there, as well as email us, but there really is a real big wealth of information there. Next slide, please. I'm gonna go over this in great detail down on the next slides. So here's our 2023 Regional North Balkan Public Meeting Schedule. So we're here tonight, March 1st, for our joint Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor forecast meeting. This Friday, we're gonna have the statewide salmon forecast meeting. Attend that in person if you want this year in Lacey Community Center there. There's gonna be a lot of talk about ocean conditions and how they've been influencing salmon. So if that's of interest to you, you should tune in. And then, of course, it's gonna go over our coastal forecast that we're gonna review tonight, as well as Columbia River forecast and Puget Sound forecast. You can also join that on Zoom, so you don't have to be in Lacey to attend. And then on March 3rd and 10th, we have the Pacific Fisheries Management Council meeting. This is where we're going to develop preliminary options for ocean fisheries. March 3rd to 10th, I just said that. March 15th is our first North Balkan meeting. And so there'll be a lot of discussion about management objectives, preliminary fishery proposals. And then shortly after that, the following week, we're going to have on the 21st, the Willapa Bay fisheries discussion. Next slide, please. And on March 22nd, a Grace Harbor fisheries discussion where we're going to give you a lot more detail about what fisheries might shape up to look like in the region specifically, and give you another chance to provide us with information, suggestions, interests, etc. March 29th, we'll have our second North Balkan meeting. And then on March 30th, we have a really tight turnaround between the North Balkan meeting and our Pacific Fishery Management Council. So we're combining our second fisheries discussion meeting this year. So we'll have Willapa Bay, Grace Harbor in the same room to further discuss our fisheries options for this year. And then March 31st to April 7th, we have a Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting 2. And so here the council is just going to narrow down our marine or ocean options, and we're going to get post fishery packages. And then we'll come back to you on April 12th with our final fisheries package. Anything that you want to find out, you can click on the link at the bottom of the page. You can join any meeting through the links on these pages that you got in your emails. And you can also just shoot me an email if you have any questions. Next slide, please. So now I'm just going to review the Administrative Procedure Act process. So we actually already started this back in January with the filing of the CR 101 for coastal commercial and Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor recreational fisheries. There's a minimum of 45 days there till the CR 102 filing. And this is when we file actual proposed rules that we're considering adopting. After that, a minimum of 35 days, we have a public hearing and accept written comments on those proposed rules. And this is when we can have a public hearing and modifications to the proposed rules can be received or any errors identified. And then there's a filing of the CR 103P and the concise explanatory statement. So this is the filing of the actual rule to be adopted. It's published to the Washington State Register after 14 days. And then the rule becomes effective 31 days after that filing. Next slide, please. So between the filing of the CR 101 and the CR 102, we have this very large process that we call the North Balkan process. So this is really the time when we do a ton of public engagement, and we want your input and your participation. And so this is where we really are getting the most benefit from having you here. Next slide, please. So here's the exciting part of the meeting when we get into our forecast and management objectives. And I'm going to hand the microphone over to the Willapa Bay biologist, Jody Pope. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene. Thanks everyone for being here.
I'm gonna walk us through, the 2023 Willapa Bay forecast. I'm not gonna read every single box for you here, but what I will explain is we have a few on the left, natural, hatcheries, and total for, so for Chinook, we have 2833 for natural. Hatchery, we've got 27,000 for a total, and plus some for a total of 30,321 returning for Chinook. For both, yeah,
Can we ask questions? With Chinook, that's the forecast. Is that coming across the bar? Is that a regular gravel?
that's coming across the bar.
Coming across the bar. So
Yep.
we're getting half our escape goal even entering the fair.
Correct.
So that was great.
Yep. Yep. Good question. For coho, these are ocean age 3 forecasts. So 42,663, 110,955 for a total of 153,618. And chum, we've got a full, total forecast of 45,694. Next slide, please. So you'll see a lot of these graphs throughout this presentation tonight. So I'm going to walk through this pretty slowly and kind of orient you so that you've got this for the rest of the presentation. So down here on the x-axis, you've got the year from 2010 to 2023. On the y-axis, we have the number of Chinook. And in this particular slide, the hatchery Chinook are the top, the lighter green. And on the bottom, you've got our natural origin Chinook. And these are where the black dot is the forecast for this year. So for just what I reported on the last slide, this will say 2833 for Chinook. And then this value right here is the total. So it's like a stacked bar graph are combined together. So as we go through this presentation, you'll see many like this, and they're all set up like this together. And this is representing the trend of Chinook over time and run size. And what you can see for our natural origin Chinook and Willapa, we've remained pretty stable over time. However, in the last couple of years, for the hatchery component, we've seen a decrease over time. Next slide, please. Yeah. Sorry?
Oh, you got 7,000 there, now you got 2 and 13 there. Everyone is drafting.
Slightly decrease. Yeah. Yeah.
Not going in the right direction.
There it is.
So this slide represents our coho and Willapa, and what you can see over the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen a trend upwards, which is a good sign for our coho, and that a component of the ocean conditions that we're seeing in many of our stocks, where the ocean productivity is contributing to our coho here. And so in the last several years, for our natural, I would say 3 years for our natural coho, we've seen an increase in for the last about 5 or 6 years for our hatchery component of coho with an increase over time. And it's important to note that for coho throughout this whole entire presentation, our 2022 values are preliminary data. Those data haven't been finalized yet. So please keep that in mind, that those values could change. Next. And here in purple, you see the Willapa Bay chum trends over time. And what we see in the last couple years is that we've seen an increase in our run size. However, we see a lower forecast, and this could be a function of ocean productivity that we're seeing across the coast and also in Puget Sound that could be driving this. And we're also seeing some differences in age classes returning. And so this could be why we're seeing the decrease happening. Yeah.
I don't see any hatchery fish up there.
Yeah, it's really hard to show. The hatchery component is really small. And so it is on there, it's just a really small component compared to the overall natural rights.
Produces thousands of things.
And with that, I will pass it over to Frank and Grace.
Hey, everybody, good to see you. It's been a while since I've stood in front of people to talk, so hopefully you can hear me fine. It's good to see a lot of you. Like I said, it's been a while. I'm gonna go through the shale-less Tulips Basin and I guess touch on the Wheats Basin's forecast. So start with spring Chinook. We've got a forecast that's just under the goal. The goal here is 1,400. We got a forecast of 1232. Fall Chinook, our forecast, and same with Willapa Bay, these are fish coming across the bar. 10,828 natural origin fish and 1,196 hatchery fish. And coho, numbered here are the number of adults that are out in the ocean just prior to us planting all of the fisheries. So that's why we call it an ocean age 3 abundance. So this is the number of fish that will be out in the ocean when we start doing the ocean fishery monitoring and all of that. So the number coming across the bar will be smaller than this. It's just going to depend on, you know, what fisheries are agreed upon out in the ocean. But typically it's about maybe 15% less. So we still have a very robust hatchery number forecast for coho. 96,000 naturals and 85,000 hatchery fish. You'll notice that hatchery component is a little bit larger than we've seen in the past. We had a pretty good return of hatchery fish this last year. And we looked at modeling methods to see if we could make some sort of adjustment to the forecast to capture this more recent improvement in survival. And we ran the model and we found that comparing rack counts this year gave us a pretty good idea of how to expand forecasts. And so we've got pretty good forecasts ahead of fish. And trends, this is a spring Chinook trend. It's a unique population, not a lot of fish out there. We've had a couple of good returns in the last couple of years and some that are pretty small. This is the lowest in a long time. But we got a forecast that's right around what we've seen, if you average them out over the last. And all these graphs go back to 2010. Next slide. So in our fall Chinook, a little bit of a question. Yes.
On that last slide, why are there no hatcheries?
There has, as far as I've been able to look back, there has never been a hatchery production in the basin for spring Chinook. And I can't answer as to why we've decided not to produce those, but it was a natural population that was maintaining itself for a number of years. So we thought best to kind of let it be.
Well, there seems to be more.
If you look at the long term, it goes up and down, but it's been right about the goal since probably the 70s. And our trend for our Chinook, a little bit of a downward trend since 2010. Had a little bit of bob for a couple of years and now we're adjusting the forecast to kind of match what we've seen in the last few years. Hatchery production is pretty small in the Chehalis Basin. That's why you don't see a big number there. Okay, next. And the coho had a big run in 2014. That's what we saw there. Then the blob developed and we had a crash in our populations. That's what we see through here. As the ocean is getting better, we're starting to see our numbers of coho return in larger numbers. So that's kind of a promising thing to look at. So another reason we have a robust forecast. Next.
And on the hump tulip side, we've got a natural fall Chinook forecast of 4,178, hatching fish of 4,726. Very close to what we've seen in the past several years. Coho, 6,212 natural coho, and 26,000 hatchery coho. Chum is a Grace Harbor stock. Again, we do have a small hatchery production that goes on. It's not very big, but we have a wild forecast of almost 52,000 and 1543 for hatchery fish. Next. So just looking at those populations over time, Chinook and the hub tulips have been pretty stable since 2010. A little bit of an increase in our hatching fish over time. But our wild fish kind of dropped a little bit. Next. Again, we see this 2014 bump in coho and then a big decline. Wild population really hasn't ever been that great. I've gone back 30, 40 years in the data set, and I think I looked at it in the last 30 years, that population made its goal 6 times. I'm not sure it's exactly what it should be. We need to evaluate that a little closer as we move on, but we've got a robust hatchery population. And our chum. Chum has been kind of a bright spot for the last 13 years. We're seeing kind of an upward trend. We're happy to see those chum come back.
What's your goal, Chuck?
21,000. Yep. And we pretty much, I think once in the last 10 years that we've not achieved. So in the Queets and Quinault systems, the number of coho again are in ocean abundance. So these numbers again will go down after ocean fisheries have been developed. But in the Quinault River, 22,595 natural coho and 30,566 hatchery coho. And in the Queets, 12,413 natural and 14,906 hatchery coho. Next. I guess we're just getting into the whole forecasts in those 2 systems. Again, there's that 2014 bump in coho. I wish we could duplicate that every single year, but we're not quite exactly sure why that happened. What Quinault River coho trends have kind of gone down a little bit over time, but we're seeing more recent increase. And I would say up and down the coast, we're seeing that increase. Something out in the ocean is probably being beneficial. Next. Yep. The next one. Queets coho. Again, there's that 2014. But we've seen the last couple of years a nice increase in the population. Yes, sir. Queets. Where's the goal on that? There really isn't an agreed to goal on the Queets. The escapement floor is 2,500. If I remember the species in the middle correctly. I say that there really isn't a great agreement because the Quinaults managed to a certain number and we haven't gotten comfortable with that number and we tend to manage to a different number. So when you get 2 entities that don't quite agree on a number, there could be some confusion and difficulties. So in the eyes of the Quinaults, if we get 2,500 fish to escape, hey James, is that the right number? Because I'm getting confused as to whether or not it's No, I think it's 4,500.
Yes, people.
4,500 and then we.
Look into it.
Yeah, I can look into it, but I think there's a range in here.
Simple and cheap. If you put the state and go on the chart, if you know the cost for the forecast, people can do the math, and put the simple and the follow a lot better.
How's that?
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Preseason, I think is fine, and I think the same for someone of those one species, the extreme goal for water.
I will say that, yes, I like that. I will say that there is room for the in-river fishery in the creeks. Next. Mike. Oh, wait, yes.
Are these predictors the Great Harbor agreed to for all?
Yes, they are. Any other questions on Grayson River? Please, no. Yes, sir.
I thought they were supposed to be producing fish with the water. I don't see anything on there. Fish with the water. They're supposed to increase production. No, salmon, okay, water.
Yes.
Right around.
And
I don't see, you presented it.
so, what I can address is that there are additional Chinook being produced in various areas throughout the state. It was determined that Grace Harbor wasn't one of those that were going to receive that increase.
I would also say that you're right. There's been significant effort to increase production focused on killer whales. But the question you're asking makes me think that in future public meetings throughout North Mountain this year, that question might come up for you. And, you know, we're talking about statewide. So we don't have a slide focused on orca production. So in these other meetings you see over the coming months, you're going to see these hatchery wild graphs. And you're going to need to assume that within those hatchery production, those include orca production. They're not separated. So those fish that return are predicted to come back. Those are after orca production, you know, orca mortality.
I think.
Yeah.
This right now, the information put that out. If you kindly explain to everybody here what happened when all stuff was stated after Chinook was used, and how they were starting to count fish and how the conflict with you guys. Your Zoom presentation last year was somewhat inadequate, because if you were looking at the spreadsheet, you really have a comparison of the blue and red all over the town, which means that's good. So we explain, I'm not even going to attempt to do this. So I can barely know it. So
Yeah. Yes, okay, so everybody understands the escapable for Chinook is natural spawning, which means whatever fish put eggs in the gravel is counted towards the goal. So in postseason evaluations as to how well did we do, we look at that number as a means to determine whether or not we achieve the escape objective. It's whatever eggs put in the gravel by whatever fish. Historically, in the pre-season development of our fisheries, we have tried to achieve that goal with natural origin fish, meaning fish that were produced from the gravel. So who cares what their parents were? They were born out of the gravel, they have an apple. So recently, there was a discussion between the co-managers to say, if we're going to move forward pre-season with a number, we should evaluate that with the same number post-season evaluation. So last year, I think the forecast was a little bit bigger than what it is now, but it wasn't very big. So of the natural origin Chinook, we put together this plan, and in the model, or in the planning model, it showed that natural origin fish were not achieving the goal, but we were moving forward. So there was some question, what's going on there? Well, we know that hatchery fish don't all go to the hatchery. They go out and spawn. Some of them go out and spawn naturally. And they are thus counted as part of the goal. So there was an agreement made between the co-managers to take the forecast of hatchery fish and apply an average stray rate that we had observed over like the last 10 years. And add those to the natural spawning group. So if you have a goal of 10,000 fish and your forecast for natural origin fish is 10,500, and you plan a fishery that takes 1,000 fish out, you're only going to have 9,500 fish to escape fisheries. But if you have 1,000 hatchery fish and 50% of them stray, you've got 500 fish adding to that natural production. And therefore, you can then move forward with planning and say, yeah, with these two components, we're going to achieve that natural spawning goal. Did that clear it up, plain as mud? Yes.
And everybody's looking at our numbers, but you see, which we've got a 5 people now to be 31. But the reality situation is, last year, Southeast Alaska, the total for Grace Harbor, the last thing you see is 60,250. And if you break it out, they took more than the Chehalis, and crossed the bar, and the little left, and the company. So, I need to vote. I know you have got the exploitation rate of television harvest. And so you're going to do that, but can you give them a general idea how it's going? Because the other place is going to be looking at a lot of tiny numbers, is going to be augmented by that. That's a big and spring. Well, that's still a small number. And you need to kind of explain how big of an impact, what that does to Grace Harbor, and it's out of your guys' control, but it's the thing that we don't know the job. Take a shot.
So I don't have enough background in it, but what the issue is that the Grace Harbor bound Chinook are being exploited in northern fisheries at least 50% rate. So if they didn't fish at all up there, we'd probably have 20,000 Chinook coming down. So the question is, what can WDFW do to help get our fish back, at least out of the southern borders? We have the Pacific Salmon Treaty that helps us with Canada and some of Southeast Alaska, but I am not confident and sure that all of Alaska is bound by the Pacific Salmon Treaty. So if there's somebody else in this room that has a little more information on how to deal with northern fisheries, I would send them to you, whoever. Okay, Ross?
I have some more peripheral information that the question I was going to ask later, but you know, a suit was filed saying 90% of the Southeast Alaska troll fishery is headed for down here. And it was won. And it was reaffirmed and whatever else probably in court is so. The only question left is now that we I think it was wild fish reserve. Now they won that suit. Where are we going to start getting more fish?
I'll take this one, Mike.
Oh, got it. Sweet, thank you.
So hi, everybody. I'm Mark Baltzell. I'm the statewide salmon and steelhead manager. There was a magistrate that made that ruling. It wasn't the actual judge. It was a magistrate. The judge in the case takes that magistrate's ruling and gets to decide what to do next, whether to affirm the magistrate's ruling or refute it or whatever happens next. I believe they have a year to do that before, some automated, like the magistrate's decision is automatically kicked in. So I think NOAA is waiting for that to happen and evaluating what their options are for that biop and that coverage in the troll fisheries in Southeast Alaska. It's not the winter fishery, if I'm remembering things right. It's it's the winter and summer troll, not the spring, if my memory serves correct.
When's that year?
Probably around this time next year is I'm guessing. I don't remember exactly when the magistrate's ruling was, maybe November, December of last year. So I think we're on hold right now to try and understand what that may mean for us down here. And I might go back and try to address the objectives within the Pacific Salmon Treaty. I don't think WDFW can do much because it's a US treaty with Canada. There are fixed, it's an abundance-based management regime, and it's based on a total abundance. That's how they set their harvest seasons. And so we have certain things that trigger different levels of fishing. But I think as far as making big changes or objections, I don't think those can happen on a year-to-year basis within the treaty. That has to be taken into account for the next renegotiation.
And I'll share, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago. 3 of the biologists from Alaska came down and visited WDFW in Region 6, and we took them out. And their goal was to figure out how do we do our escapement of estimates, because they were concerned and they weren't sure if we knew what we were doing. So it was fun to have them down here for a week and pick their brains, talk with them, and then show them exactly what we do. And they left with a pretty, well, they figured that we actually do know what we're doing down here. And so it was a pretty positive exchange of information and ideas and a visit.
When you say government benefit issue,
Yeah,
sounds good. Thanks.
maybe. I would love to see that. It would be nice.
I'll see how Jersey will figure it out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's as you indicated, Russ, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I don't know for sure, but I don't think NOAA quite knows how they're going to go forward with this one.
They're gonna get told.
Well, I mean, I'm imagining they'll have to redo a biological opinion and go through that process again. But again, that takes a while.
I mean, the point of the question was that so people are aware of my, with the way the models often involved. If people understand, this is not exhibited by anything alone that's going on. This is what you do. The state is, I've never heard the government or seen anything that the butchering the trade of children. It never happens. Okay. So everybody's always got to try or do it. The damage is done before they do, unless you can stay quiet. Okay. And Colons don't have anything to say about it. It's outside, unless you can stay quiet. I have like the rest. So my point is, last year, 16,250 gone, and that's not counting the ocean, it's capped on another 200. And so basically, guys, it doesn't matter what the back there is, and I'm saying it's only because I have a very large tribute to Mr. Pelosi's movement of shutting down fisheries last year, competition. And I'm still going to do it. point of it, not that I've got one, I think it's what they understand. The point of this is, we pick on the people that are harvesting, that you reduce the amount of damage to the run. You made a concentration, there's some cloud, that you just pass that. Okay. You don't pick on the little small, and then what the color is that. It's not basic training, but it's fairness. And so I'm just saying.
Thank you.
And by the way, there are several people, I don't know, only a couple in this room. Alan knows how fishing is very, and I'm more familiar with the South than anybody here of how it's going to be, about we've talked 20 years. And they have this big pattern, you can flip it. And so there are things, position, they require such action. But it's on different things, there's different, there's different things for fishing. So all I'm saying is, when you go to something that's little short, I would really hate to see everybody out there fishing in the middle of when the guy at the bottom of the huge damage big public. You have a responsibility to ensure that everything.
So with that, we're gonna move into our management objectives and. Do you want me to take it or you got it?
I'll take us through the last part here. Thanks, Mike. So just real quick, I'll briefly go over our 2023 management objectives for Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor. So again, this year in Willapa Bay, we have interim guidance that was received in January from the Fish and Wildlife Commission to carry forward our 2021 interim guidance. Same as last year, so we will be managing Chinook to a 20% impact rate cap in Willapa River and Maysel River. We will manage chum to the escapement pool and coho to our escapement pool. In Grace Harbor, our forecast is below the goal of 1,400 fish for our spring Chinook fisheries. So we won't be offering one of those this year. We did not meet the goal, the escapement goal for Hump Tulips coho in 3 out of the 5 last year. So we will be managing to 5% impact rate cap there. But all the other stocks will be managed for escapement goals. Next slide, please. So we can continue our conversation here and answer any more questions you may have. There are a couple of ways to provide feedback and to give us fishery inputs throughout this North of Falcon process. There's a link to submit comments electronically at our statewide site there at the top. If you'd like to send a more personal email to Willapa Bay managers or Grace Harbor managers, you can see the email address to do that there. Not part of the distribution list for either one of the bays, you can email at that address and we'll make sure you get on it. And with that, any more questions, please? Mr. Barker.
Yes, this year another PHOS for your discussion. So I have to ask the question. Do you see PHOS in Willapa Bay as a major problem? On Chinook?
Yeah, I can do this.
Okay.
Please
Yeah.
do.
So, yeah, thanks for the question. And it's complex, right? It's not simple. There's a lot of pieces to it, hatchery management, fisheries that we plan, outside the spawning grounds, all these things that affect it. But the short answer is yes, PHOS is an issue, not as a personal opinion of anybody here, but just to meet our management objectives. If our goal is, conservation and opportunity, hatchery fish on the spawning grounds are an obstruction to both. They're challenging. So we got a number of tools there, we're trying to chase this one down where we can maximize hatchery production without it impeding our conservation objectives. The other note I just want to share, we don't have graphs and things to show this, but Jody and her team does a lot of forecasting work in Willapa Bay, as you guys know. And what we do across the state is we look for variables like ocean climate, or maybe marine mammals or other things that help us predict the fish coming back. I think everybody's familiar with that. So you find out that warm ocean water is bad, that's a great predictor of forecasting, so we can do better at predicting the number of fish to come back. At certain rivers in Willapa Bay, our best predictor, the best variable we can look at is the number of hatchery fish on the spawning ground. So what I mean is the more hatchery fish on the spawning ground, the fewer fish total adults we see come back in future years. So we know hatchery fish on the spawning ground is not what we want. So yes, we agree it's a problem.
Yes, I see it as a problem, regulatory. In other words, I think it hurts us with the feds. We talk about how many wild fish we have, you know, if they're 80% hatchery fish, I think that puts us in jeopardy. That's my concern. The other thing is, you list PHOS for the three hatchery rivers, okay? And, but what I think we should look at is where is PHOS first of all, okay? And where PHOS high hurts us the most is where there's the lowest escape going. In other words, if you have a 70% PHOS in the North Lima River, okay, it's applied to 200 fish. You have a 70% PHOS number in the Nazelle River. It's really producing a lot of big wild fish, and I think we're in jeopardy when we do that. And one of the things we'll point out in future meetings, I get, but we keep hearing rumors, but we're always in Chinook, and we don't need to plant Chinook in the Nima anymore. I think the Nima is the lowest risk place to plant Chinook. And you should keep that in mind. As these other rivers with high PHOS and high numbers that are going to get the feds looking at us like they're not really producing natural oil. That's my concern. If you get ready to spend $16 million in the Nazelle, the weird to try to help it out. You know?
Yeah.
So that's my concern, and it sounds like you should.
We share it, and there's you mentioned the Fed, so there's always sort of oversight to work we do, but even just the basic math for us.
Yeah.
If the goal is producing a large number of wild and hatchery adults, putting hatchery fish on the spawning grounds doesn't get us to either one. And not like my opinion, just the simple math. So even if there's other outsiders that are looking in saying we don't like what we see, that's something we consider. But just for us to try to get people out fishing, catching fish, and get a bunch of wild fish meeting our objectives, hatchery fish on the spawning grounds isn't doing it. And we've got lots of places where, you know, we can look back and say, okay, we flooded the spawning grounds with hatchery fish. What did we get out of it? And we typically don't get a whole bunch of these wild fish back from that. Like,
It proves the wild fish important things, is what you say, is.
I will say things like they so weird, but other tools we can use in the hatchery, just better active practices. We have new biologists in the team now that are specifically focused on hatchery monitoring and evaluation. So these are hatchery support teams to try to have super smart hatcheries maximize the number of fish out that will give us the most adults back. The juvenile fish, right? That's not what we're raising. We're trying to raise big adults. So yeah, just changing the way we look at it, trying to get a large number of hatchery fish back to get caught. That's the goal. Get caught. Yeah, to get caught. That's the goal.
That's right. And when we close everything in the Nazelle River, and go to the highway bridge, you're eliminating the lowest impact harvest. I think that's in later meetings. We need to think about that.
Yeah, and one last thing, this is the topic.
Mortality rate bad.
Yeah, this is an important topic for us, Pias and Willapa. But I do want to just make sure that there will be a time here tonight where we just run out. And I want to make sure specifically, because we have multiple meetings to talk about fisheries, fish coming back. I want to make sure the forecasting stuff, if there's any questions about our numbers, how we got to them, is this number higher than last year or lower than last year? I want to make sure folks get those questions out the door too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Have you ever catch on your hole and itself? Is there any connection between the outfit, natural farming, and the package pickup? Is there anything?
Yeah. So, I'll want to make sure that our experts in Willapa get the first shot that I can help us. Yeah, so, one issue we have in Willapa is, in lots of places in the state, is we look at the difference between hatchery and wild genetically, and we see small to no difference, right, genetically. And so we can conclude, okay, well, hatchery and wild fish are the same. The issue with that is usually we see that in places where we have integrated hatchery. So we're actively bringing wild fish into our hatchery populations and producing a hatchery product. So just based on the principle of integrated hatchery, we wouldn't expect genetic distinction. But what we do know is if we compare a fish that has been raised in the wild for multiple generations in places like Willapa, right next to our hatchery fish, we do see a difference in terms of survival rates and fitness. And there's pretty simple math in our forecasting work to show in years of low PHOS, where we had close to zero hatchery fish, we see zero unclipped fish, we see the greatest survival of those farms. And years where we have high PHOS, we see fewer adults come back and low survival. So it's not really a matter of like genetically, is this fish better than this fish? It's just who produces the most adult fat. And we know the unmarked fish produce more than the active fish. So I think that's the best way to think about it in a place like that.
Yeah, it's round the area that we've had the atmosphere that you use 3 times, but it's not their genes, it's their training. I actually fish in the hatchery is trained differently than a wild fish in the wild.
But
He's hand fed, et cetera, he's treated different.
But I will say, just to make sure we're very clear about what we're arguing about, is there's a distinction between these two fish, and there's management objectives associated with them. But we also have hatcheries in Willapa Bay and other places, Grace Harbor, that produce really high survival rates and support really important fisheries. So this isn't about one or the other, it's about meeting management objectives for both of them. So I just want to make sure we're clear. This isn't that hatchery fish are less or worse. It's that we have different objectives for the two.
What's up, Mr. Campbell? Good to see you. I saw your hand go up before Al, so you have to say one. John?
Raise our relations to the banks for the state. And in my opinion, statement is definitely overestimated model. Reason for that is that it counts most of the benefit harvest as a state. Model allows 2%, 3% net profit. Anybody who's willing to bet on the tomatoes knows it's probably 10 times. It strikes me that you're always gonna overestimate the statement if you don't get a realistic benefit harvest around into this model. Wondering if the WDFW is even considering getting a realistic harvest.
It's certainly a great question, and I don't have the funding to do that right now. And it's something that is often discussed in all our work groups. We understand that those populations have been on the increase, and they learn quickly where the easy meal is. So certainly it's being discussed. We haven't moved forward with anything at this time. So
I've brought this up for 5 years now. I'm getting tired of hearing about it.
well,
It's a significant issue. And it's being done. Physically, model comes
Yep.
out saying 2 or 3%, everything else is state.
Yep. And you know, we gear our commercial fishery later in the season towards coho, towards chum. Thankfully, we've seen strong populations of those fish. So as we move forward, this is going to be certainly an increased discussion with both internally and co-management wise. But, you know, I have not been, or have I heard any new studies that have come out to address that issue at this time?
But the study that you're using came up with numbers anywhere from 2%, 87%. would make just as much sense to pick any one of them instead of 2%. And you could go back to that 1997 study, and pick any one.
We will dig in deeper as we move forward.
And maybe I'll just add, if I'm understanding this right, just briefly, in our forecast that Mike and Joe here are working on, there was a piece there, I think you were asking, is marine mammal predation included in the forecast? Like, are we accounting for that? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that benefits take 10-20%, they count as escapement because they don't show up in part as harvest.
Yeah.
We gotta get to Al first.
I got about 8 or 10 things I want to talk
Okay, we'll go fast.
First of all, he just mentioned sea lions.
Yep.
Seals, okay, that's one of them. Disabled access. When you go to no boats, I got some friends that they can't walk on bank, they have to go on boat. They was completely shut out this year, especially the steelhead. Like, there's no place to go really on the boat, on the road or they sell or whatever. Get fish out of the boat. That's something to look at. Another one of my friends wanted the salmon season left over through the month of December. And the Chehalis.
Yep.
He also wanted the jacks season to open the 1st of September, because there's hardly any earlier.
So move it back instead of
It was
August 1st.
Okay. On barbless hooks, the Chehalis and Hump tulips should be barbless hooks starting the 16th of August, and the rest of the side rivers 1st of September, because very few Chinook ever enter like the Saxon from Minucci and stuff till we get a rain. Let's see here. Okay. With the commercial license buyback, especially on Grace Harbor, there's enough coho, the private's probably gonna fish 4 or 5 days a week. The department needs to go to the commission and rescind that this year with the big run, there's non-treaties won't get fish, commercial. That's something that needs to be looked at real good. Let's see here. Definitely less concrete fish in both Grace Harbor and Willapa. Willapa Springs last year it opened for spring Chinook. And it was too late, the fish was already brown. Should have been open at least 2 or 3 weeks early. And there was a third on the fish stock. They was all 24 inch, 25 inches.
Yeah,
So I didn't consider jacks.
and that was a one-time release. And
This year, that the 4-year adults should be back, or should be way more.
This year's 5 years. 5 years. Last.
This year.
Yep. The
Unless
last year was the 4 years, 4-year-olds, and this year.
so
will be
the
5
forecast for this coming fall
years.
will be just the 5-year-old age class, which last several years of Chinook and Chum, the age 5 class hasn't been performing well, although we're starting to see kind of a rebound in those fish.
I
So,
thought the spring should have not fall.
yeah,
Yep.
and we've seen the same thing in both spring and falls, is that older age component hasn't been doing as well. And what's coming back this fall are those age 5 springers. So there's only gonna be one age class coming back.
I thought last year there was only 3-year-old fish, because that's the size they was.
Yeah, no, last year was 4-year-olds, and this
You
year
could scale samples.
we didn't, no, but we have the heads that have come back, so. we can-
The code white
The
text.
coded wire tags that are in them.
How did you, they was released at 90-day wonders, how did you put code wire tags on?
Well, so I think that, so number one, putting code of our tags at fish that size is fine, but the real question is, which year did we release them? We released them 1 year, so the math is really based on spring Chinook returning, the years we expected, so. I do think in terms of that fishery, though, you were saying 2 weeks earlier, an age 5 spring Chinook isn't out of the ordinary. I mean, those do exist, right? We don't expect a large number of them, but, I just want to highlight that, the 2 week period you're talking about, a couple weeks earlier, we were all scratching our head like, where are these fish? So we did a bunch of snorkel surveys, below Forks Creek and Willapa River and places looking for these fish. We were all pretty excited to see them. And, didn't, we were surprised, but Rob Allen pushed us and Jody decided in the end, like, why would we not just open this? Even though we don't see them, maybe they're there. So what we heard was really positive feedback about it. You're suggesting a couple weeks earlier would have made a difference.
That is brown.
All right, well, let us talk about it, think about it. There's some indication there's a bunch of age 5 spring Chinook in there. There's really no reason not to open it. We were worried about some steelhead or trout, but that fishery was responsible and we were proud of it. So I think a couple weeks earlier is something we should think about. If we could pull it off this year.
So one thing for enforcement. I've been doing some steelhead fishing and polo fishing in December and January. And I pulled a lot of hooks out of the river and stuff, the bars. Need to be more enforcement over there for farm facilities.
Where specifically?
In the Willapa
River. So Al, if I could encourage you to type up those recommendations that you had and send it to. Yeah, that would be great, because that's part of what we do is take in the information and the ideas from you guys.
And I'll think up some more stuff.
Well, yeah, and as we move forward through this process, we're giving you the forecast and is saying, hey, here's how many fish that we think we get to play with. How do you guys want to play with those fish? So for the next few weeks, month or so, that's what we're going to do. We're going to hear from you guys. What do you think we should do? We've got ideas. We're going to present some at the next meeting. And if you guys notice, the end of this process is really condensed. So we're all going to run up to Linwood, do our North of Falcon 2 meetings, come back, have our meeting with you guys on Thursday night, and then fly to California, I think Sunday morning. So we've got this turnaround. So please bear in mind that the end of this process is going to happen real fast. So just wanted to get that out. I did see Dave had a question. Okay.
In some way, consideration of the handicap. And to be honest, we like to do the plan with it. We got a handicap sticker, you hang on the car, hanging on the like that, and you gotta have one in the hat, you got a bar in your hand, you gotta go. And it's really hard not to stand out in a crowd like that. If you come down the boat and go fishing in the boat, and if you got a handicap sticker, you're gonna stand out like a sore thumb. You can't hide.
Yep.
So it's something. Now, I guarantee you, I say that there will be some type of person that I guarantee is gonna try to screw the people. Okay, and cheat. And I don't care what you do on every other people do crap or the crowd. And then if you don't penalize, you have 99 for that.
Francis.
I got a couple of comments, actually, someone in public. Guys trying to measure it all, have an idea at all, how many fish you save, local salmon. About the fish pick up in Tidewater, all basically the mountain stuff. They park there. You have an entire state of local. City. Any idea how many fish you save?
So if I can address it, this wasn't designed to provide any protection for coho. It was a Chinook, it was more so for the Chinook. We knew we had a smaller number of Chinook and they were very susceptible. So, we had a large forecast for coho. And so we knew that, we didn't know, but we had a pretty good idea we're gonna have a bunch of them out there and we really didn't need to protect coho. But yes, and I think for good measures, as we saw, the number of fish on spawning grounds wasn't what we had predicted. And so the move was to give those Chinook a little bit of relief from being kegged up in the deep pools where we had fisheries or coho on.
Great segue into that.
Sweet, I'm glad we could move that.
So we got anti-volatile fishing restriction in September 16. Yeah, it's a tough one. There's a lot of guys, 20 to 30 things a day. Of all the eggs. We've got a flood conservation issue, very well enough. We're basically 110% of the state for basically, that's we would fish that in half. You want to fish a previous statement for the two numbers, essentially the same number, 5. So, just putting it out there.
And I'll let you know that there were conversations last year with enforcement about working on regulations that would provide more protection for Chinook that are kegged up in the deeper
I
pools.
think the biggest thing with that is a lot of guys fish, exactly. Things too, making most of them are drifting their eggs on bottom, like asking here, where what we wanted to serve the people out there to pick off all of them. And hold on enough.
Right. Okay, good recommendation.
That, in my mind, that's the problem, that's.
And
We can differ with the dates and where we think of the.
right. And as I said earlier, I encourage all of you guys to tell all your friends, send us these things. A lot of people aren't going to attend meetings because a lot of them don't like Zooms. So send us, we got the email addresses up there. Send them then into us so that we get them all written down. Ross.
Yes, a question for Mr. Boswell, since this affects both bases. Plain English reading of the Willapa bill says that this is for conservation, specifically says, if I read it, that fish saved by buying out nets, are to go towards conservation, not for the surviving nets. So in an individual meetings, can we expect to see that in the calculations? Or even so what you got 20% and that overrides the law?
So are you talking about the buyback legislation from last year?
Under which, that's just the legislation under which they were just bought back. What it said when I read it was that this is for conservation. Okay, it's not to go to other nets with the same mortality rate as those who bought out. And so, do we expect to see that, or do you see it differently?
So full disclosure, I'm not highly involved in the buyback. That's really been focused on our Columbia River team. This gentleman over here has an answer to that, but I think that
both bases.
no, I understand how the licenses work.
Was it Columbia River buyback?
I
can help with this one. So most of you, I think, know me in this room, and Chad Aaron once again.
Use of bill that will some offset. The language that you're referencing in that proviso bill is specific to the Columbia River. Willow Bay and Grace Harbor licenses were included as a rider to that, but proviso language in terms of the savings generated from the commercial buyback is specific to the Columbia River. Yes, yeah, that's the answer.
In the back there.
So I want to verify that the schedule is coming up so that March 22nd date. That's only on Zoom. And people can talk on that meeting on Zoom, unlike this meeting that is one that's not here.
Correct.
So I'm verify how it's all works. Okay, next comment that goes along with, I'll jump on the bandwagon that handicap issue. When I became handicapped 2 years ago, and I heard the whole conversation, well, it was crazy. And it pushed me over the edge to make sure I can get back up to the road that I couldn't go. But I've seen some amazing people do some amazing things with the handicap in the boat, because there's no reason why they cannot fish from the boat and have to get out. So, along the next lines, Francis's proposal, that sounds really good. I like the idea that we could target, how people are using gear and stop them from getting, our fishers adversely. On another note, I personally thought the best way this protocol, we did really well. Especially in the ocean fishery, and I very much.
Oh, you're welcome. We all.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated what you guys did at the table numbers and what happened. And got to put it on. Be able to say, we did well, thank you very much.
I think Mother Nature is the bigger
Yeah,
thing.
and I know that that's a lot to do with.
Yeah.
You know, thanks.
Hey, can I just have a quick question? Thanks for all that feedback. The positive feedback is pretty cool, but also the other stuff. So this proposal, just really briefly, because we have lots of meetings to talk about fishery proposals, but I just want to make sure I understand that your proposal that does not allow fishing from the bobber sounds interesting. This is what you're.
I heard today, it's good to look about there.
Yeah.
On the tracks, you asked me or, and, you know, thinking about it as Mary. I'm not bothered there. Well, and, you know, we have an intense jack fishery, we have even more interest in them. Till they're done, hey.
Well, my question is,
I don't want to see, I don't want to go to the war with you. Not my proposal, I was asked for your color. It does have some.
I just want to ask you a quick question, but I don't want this to be confused for advocating for this, because that's what I'm just curious about it as we all talk, but any gear proposal that essentially closes the fishery, right? Makes it so hard to catch a fish that you might as well close. I'm always wondering, and I wonder if you can still actively catch fish without your bobber here. And so that's great. I'd assume solid proposal. It just limits the take on Chinook, doesn't exclude all fishing. But then the other question I ask is in other rivers, like the Quileute, parts of the Ho sometimes, to protect Chinook, we don't allow bait. And folks prefer that because they can still fish with plugs and things, catch fish, but fewer of them. So is the no bobber, would it be preferred over no bait?
I don't know, this is the first time anything like this. Oh, we're usually when we get stuff like this, but we can't, there's no way for us to model the savings. Yeah. I don't know if it's for a river or a whole bunch of. I'm proposing it for the chain stench of Gales River. And this first practice of the Asian line suggested September 16 through August, October 31.
Yeah, well, we fishing from stone.
Yeah, so.
You can get license markings to make it.
And you can still, you can fish for jack and egg. It's extremely popular, underutilized fishing. It really is, there's a lot of, right, it's a guy that would be in this room if he wasn't afraid of them. COVID, say, there should be no limit on jacks, because you're not using them as part of your goal. And tons of them are surplus away, and lots of people have them. But why not a limited process? Why not no limit? You have a rule that says you catch your out fish, you're going to pay, so that doesn't change. Take your chance to get a little higher, the better use of an underutilized. I would just say.
Hey.
I'd like to say one thing. Rock and I went back and forth, it said, community this, I tell you, there's about 100 people that say they require new bait to the day. Okay? And you're going to have fish today, as we've gone through, it's a great comparison to get back to what we're talking about. Okay? And here's the thing, I'm glad Alan's here, is this. When the Chinook come up to Taiwan, I can handle it every now and sometimes can't hold it away from it, just depends on what they have to do. Well, these egg fish that we've been talking about, if we're out with the jack, often those food, they don't get that many Chinook, and they're drifting eggs like that, like the Chinook will break off, if they do get one, so. Considering the guys fishing all there, it's not that many. When this takes place, that we're talking about, is when the fish are coming through and they stay. Okay, and they are going to do that somewhere down below the Safford River, up to South Carolina. Okay, and so that is where we're going with certain eggs at the bottom. If you want to put it into that, all you've got to do is put the cutoff line, the 50 acres, down below forehead, and that'll take care of the problem. Because it's about the fish stopping and the moving stop the Safford, which is number one. That's all it is. And they stage up. Once they slide up, they tough as nails, like you talked to me. But if they are sliding up, and the water temperature is above 60, anywhere above south line, they are going. And so the fact is, the upper shade, that's why we, and stuff like that. It's 100% closer to the rooftop. We get 3 male, 4 hands, vice versa. Out in the afternoon, males just help tell. Females is perfect right now. And the agency staff, the work that come back and said, it's about the stress of acres on it, and the water thing. We did everything for it, we got it on and very soon, we won't have it happen fast. It's flying the clock, got so old, we don't get it. Won't come back. It's time. So, if we're working at the jack fishery stuff, most of that takes place on we call skinny one, and it's a certain place in the tide, and then there's more of it over our foot. But they're saying that adult, by the way, catching and releasing the Chinook is perfectly legal. It's no different than releasing one in John's River, which in an average year is more Chinook or the ocean, or steelhead. Okay, this just happens to be one that the operates of it, ugly. But it's no different than the other fish. Okay, and the bill of those fish is paid in the harvest model. Okay, but that's what that hooking mentality says. If it needs to be greater than one, make it greater. But if you take a blanket the whole thing, you with the same paper, that isn't fair at all. Okay, and by the way, the greatest violators of the same rule we talked about. And I fish with guys and stuff all over the planet. Or guys, they have got to be a problem. And not only that, they won't reach over and just cut the damn lever, which brought the mortality like way down. They gotta fix it, or they fix up and take a picture of it for the client. And so it gets out of hand. And we have a problem, but this problem was known in 1990 when the local community tried to get at it. We got the same problem at the Esper, okay, it goes on. And there's ways around the problem, but we tried to get the agents for it, and it was lifting it, they shut it down. They said, no, we want it just like it is, we tried for 10 years, and we did not do it. So here's one more to discuss like that. Don't be too far. All the drivers drag up some of the old holes. That's the thing about it, this is a problem created by the agency, the local community, see coming 130 years ago. Okay, it was the agency. So the idea of no water pollution stuff, well, that's kind of how you fix the gap. Okay. Other way, I fish strictly the standards, because I thought you can't fish your boat. It depends how many pounds you want to take away from the small fish and everything else out there. So it gets right down to, as the fish are moving with the tide and everything else, they're gonna lollygag and do that, and we'll sometimes stop for a week or so, like a big movie we had like up in here. But it's all about when that fish has not slimed up yet, and fully transition, they're gonna stop for that cool water to stage it. And they're gonna be there for a while, and then they'll start moving up. There will always be a Chinook at Schaefer Park by the 5th of October. Okay? Religious people. Okay? They will be carrying along. If you get a little rain, they'll come more. But they will study things through October and November. When they go up the Saturday, they will pop from one place to the other place. They do not stay. They will get that Schaefer Park and even past the spring before it's really walk apart. And so there's a pattern of behavior, and you can interrupt it by humans, so we can mitigate how we do it. It's just a matter of working the problem in a pragmatic way and understanding what takes place. And that damage, Dylan talked about, is between the South Ella Bridge and about 2 miles below Fort Hill. When those fish haven't rained and they move, and the minute it rains, they're out of the light. Don't even think about it. And it doesn't take a lot of rain. It just takes it up and we call it the microphone something. And practice water comes cold. Any ground and water will quickly shut up, doesn't move like the South. So it's all about there'll be something on Cook Creek, that's usually John. It's above Cook Creek, or it's that low. So our ways to mitigate this thing and work around it, it doesn't put the spirit neutral and benefit the fish. And I don't mean to talk on, but it can be done without a lot of damn cost effort. Chinook very seldom slow down hardly at all. All the Satchel Bridge on the Sapper. And the river, they will be there, hang out, but they don't stop. They're going to really stop. It's a little place. And that's what the great banking access is for those two rivers. So it's not like you can't work around the problem. So advantage is no longer this and that. I guess the best way to do it is you can find a marker like a power line that crosses the river below Fort Hill. And the South Ella Bridge, no bait. And when you say no bait, you better take the chicken out at the same time. It's one thing up there together. And so right there, if you listen to that's right there, when you know what it's going to do, you can knock the problem out right now. And you can limit the damage of the Central Plain just by using the bridges until the rain, you open the river flows. It's that damn simple. There's a police, just have to know how to fix it. And they are consistent. The only thing they do is they change location. Okay, I've seen it shown back at the Saturday morning, and I fished on them for weeks, and my wife was just having get really had a good old time. The Channel 4 showed up and took a big video off the bridge, and half of Seattle was sending down the next day. Okay, so, you know, and then the jump with that, they want to put for everybody. Stop there, and you stand up on the road, that's what, guy throw stuff out, the whole field, a big black map. And when they come across, they just spread out, and they come right back in behind. It's up there watching. So, the pattern is, so if you guys have to do something, I would suggest that there, not just me, Alan, and others, there are people that fish this thing forever. Just send an email out, that we got a problem, we need to discuss it, there's more problems, what you want. Okay, and I get it, people will be there.
That's exactly what this process is right now. Send in your recommendations.
So, not the Japanese, but I do.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Anybody who doesn't think that people specifically targeting, you know, the they have us. Especially by it's as we said, you have to hold this fish up, they want to remove them, they want to remove them, they want flag and rights. And the drives on those pictures, because that increases their numbers of clients. And that is a problem. It really is. My second comment is that I really appreciate the direction that you guys took last year when you saw the numbers coming in, the cohort, and decided to allow us to keep wild fish at the end of the season. You still had major returns after that. And I remember when we had major returns 15, 20 years ago, and they would open areas in the straits of the wild fish because they knew that these fish were coming in. So I really appreciate that little value because it was a good tool. And that's not something I normally say to you guys if you made a reference to, but that way it is.
We'll take it.
Way
to go, Mark.
That he went back to opening while the fish was still in the lower river in the bay. For 3 years, we struggled catching fish, and people complained about how upriver fishermen were getting screwed over. The reality was that when you wait until October 1st, the fish are all above 5 miles. That's the reality. So, you know, opportunity is for those fish in the latter part of September. After October 1st, those fish will move. This last year, we had a huge fish of fish right before the season opened, right after the season opened. That was right out. Fishing was up for a little while until the second phase. But I appreciate the moves that were made to think about fishing in that regard. When the fish are there, we can be able to fish. One thing about last year, that very moving, that they moved the day before the cold, 2 days before the nation went into the fish. Well, they didn't get in the cold, and I have 2 members that tell me that I use my dog. The first day the nation went in, and this guy, he was done with it, he got 50, you know. And then the next day, 30 or something, I can't get that, and then they were out and then. So it was that, you know, that law that was around, but you know, it was like ridiculous. I mean, you kept the damn thing to the bathtub. I mean, when they all moved, so we had some insurance, we found them the last couple of days of the law. And the Chinook were just a little behind. Oh, because that's what they really are. And the guy, well, you know, if he left one at the bottom of the house, the other that's down by one of the railroad structure. So they're all done. That's where you fish. They're going to do the fish. In one night, that's pretty awesome. We need to get 5, 6, or 10 seasons. And so that's moving, that's how we're on. And I just thought I'd share that with you because it's the advantage of good on.
Must be nice. Yes.
Yes, I got a couple of requests. With all the work that the Grace Harbor Food Club does on the Wichita, and it's not open till the October 1st, and I would like to see it open September 1st, no later than the 16th of September. Because if you get any kind of a rain, there's probably at least 30 or 40% of the run is already up at the hatch. So, you know, for all they do and breaking all those fish, it should be open for harvest. But have no faith, just, you know, just learn only. And then my other request is that Manwickel Creek, that thing gets about 400 to 500 chipmunks a year. They only spawn 15 to 20 pairs. That thing should be open to a harvest of one fish a day and one and done, because there's 300 or 400 fish or, you know, you spend all the money raising them and they basically go to waste. Yes. And then the other thing I'd like to see is, I've asked before, but we should have some kind of a sturgeon fishery out here in the Chehalis like we do down on the Columbia. I don't care if it's one day for 5 hours, whatever, but we should have a sturgeon fish.
So we got your salmon. And for sturgeon, you would have to go down and talk to Region 5 folks.
Okay, well, that's the one. Okay.
I was just saying the same way, I know a few people that actually release sturgeon in Lower Bay. They're really, since we quit netting and selling, they're really doing well in Lower Bay. Lots of sturgeon, and I'd like to see some kind of a season where you can keep the sturgeon one, and if they really come back, they can't take a big net fishing, they can't take a big sport fishery, but it does not make sense to have them zero. And if you'd like to get people out fishing to sell licenses, it would be great to have what are the appropriate time frame is with one sturgeon in local bay. There are lots of them there, and the beds are just a little bit.
Well, we are in salmon management, and we've got your recommendations on record. And again, Columbia River sturgeon are managed as a stock, and they go all over the place. And recommendations probably really should go to Region 5, as that's where the sturgeon management team is. Yeah, it's on the website.
Well, I can probably help out there. We've had this conversation, this has been a running conversation for a number of years, right? As I forget what year it was, 15, 14, somewhere back in there. When we've enacted some more strict conservation measures for sturgeon around the state. As Mike referenced, our sturgeon populations here that we encounter in Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor are part of what we consider the Columbia Bay stock, or Columbia River stock. And we have very limited harvestable surplus in that stock. Now, as part of how we go after whatever is available in terms of harvestable surplus in any one year is negotiated as part of the USD Oregon Compact. Okay, so that we manage that stock concurrently with Oregon. They're entitled to some of those fish, just like we're entitled to some of those fish, if there is a harvestable surplus. Now, in recent years, since 2000 and whatever, we haven't had robust surpluses of sturgeon that would allow robust fisheries across the state. Now, when Willapa Bay and Grace Harbor were open traditionally before, we were talking about harvestable surpluses and fish from Washington side. There were 10,000 or so animals. Now what we're talking about is a few hundred available in the Columbia River. And so given such a low number available, it's really important that we have strict management measures to go along with that. I.e., we have to have a really robust grid in place in order to manage to a number so tight. We have that ability in the Columbia River. We do not have those FREO programs in place in Willapa Bay or Grays Harbor in order to assure that we can stay within those objectives. And that quite simply is the reason why we don't have certain fisheries here. Once we have harvestable surpluses that would allow fisheries to be open more robustly in areas across the state, then we would consider doing that. But until that happens, with such slim margins, that's not really something we're going to consider.
Well, with all the charter boats and everything else, and whatever, that's never going to happen. You just cut us out. That's fine.
Yeah, are there actually desk fisheries going on in the Chehalis and the local bay to know those numbers? All these low numbers substantiated outside of the one.
What I'm talking about is low numbers in terms of a harvestable surplus. So forecasts, just like in this process, forecasts are generated every year, and then there's a management objective that's applied to whatever the difference is left over. It's calculated as harvestable surplus. I'm not talking about information that's generated from any fishery monitoring programs within these two estuaries. I'm just talking about the pure number of Columbia River, either white or green sturgeon that are available in any given year. That number has been so low as to not allow fisheries to be open across the state.
There are no green areas. You're basing the numbers on the river. When obviously Willapa Bay and Chehalis for different.
But the fish are not. The Willapa Bay and Grays Harbor don't have indigenous sturgeon populations. These are really what they call juvenile kind of nursery areas where we get basically kind of teenage sturgeon that hang out. They do get to the decent size. We don't see them nearly the adult size that we see in the Columbia. Basically those stock, they're Columbia River stock. They're fish from the Columbia River. There is no spawning of sturgeon in Willapa Bay or Grays Harbor.
How does that work?
Because the strict migrant are natural. It's like,
No, I understand that, but you're basing the numbers on the river when we have the numbers from Willapa Bay and Grays Harbor. So I mean, that doesn't make sense.
we have, so there is no forecast of Willapa Bay and Grays Harbor sturgeon. There is only a forecast of Columbia River sturgeon. And that applies to the whole stock, of which some of those you were encountering in Willapa Bay and Grays Harbor. No separate numbers. One forecast.
So
I also have.
That sounds like it's a topic. Monitoring, the whole system. Grays Harbor, rather than-
That system is based on the genetic baseline of sturgeon across the Pacific. What they have been able to assess, basically there's three stocks, the Sacramento, Columbia River, and the other Fraser. Fraser, yeah. So those are the three stocks that we have.
So we're getting a little low on time, so I wanted to kind of get back to the forecasting, the reason why we kind of got together here. And ask if there are any more questions about any of the forecasts, or maybe how many fish we might have available and what are we looking at in terms of fish that we're playing with. So I kind of maybe redirect us that direction.
Have we made state declaration of on the last 5 years, 3 years?
For Chehalis?
With the gas, well,
Yes. Yes, we did not this last year, but I think we're still in the 3 out of 5.
well, not according to the numbers I see here, I don't see the last 5 years, I see 2 red figures. that show-
The red ones are not the good numbers. I'm trying to find The handout, oh, I don't see it. So, green sheet. Green sheet, so 2018 through 20, we achieved the goal. 21 and 22, we did not achieve the goal. So that still leaves us 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I see, in the last 22, I see, 2022, I see red numbers, 2021, I see red numbers, and then I see.
Yeah, 18 through 20, we made the goal.
Above that, we haven't stayed.
Yes,
So how do we not get sufficient? We got a 3 out of 5 system, how do we not get sufficient?
because if you look at the forecast, it's about this much above the goal. And if I mention Chinook retention, everybody in Tacoma and Seattle will flock out here. And this much above the goal will go away in 1 week and you're done fishing for the year.
Well, I just want to try to make that program. Whether you're fishing to the goal, or whether you fish it to a 5% impact, it's the same amount.
So
Plus or minus 3 or 4.
as we move forward, we'll probably use those available impacts to target coho and chum because those are very abundant. And then we will probably provide our Chinook impacts and directed fisheries in the hump tulips because we have a more robust population and forecast there. But at this point in time, we haven't made a decision. So if you have a recommendation, we would gladly take those.
It's just like the 3 out of 5 seems to be a pretty steadfast rule that you know. But then when you make it, then it comes down to numbers as well. And it's like, it's kind of, people don't realize you really understand that until the numbers are pointed out to you. And that needs to be figured into this because otherwise people get the wrong impression.
And another issue is that we don't have a huge hatchery program in the Chehalis. It's a pretty small one and it doesn't, it's supposed to be 500,000. We rarely ever get to that. Lots of issues there, but so we don't have that ability to go mark selective because we'll be sorting through lots of wild fish to get to a hatchery fish. So there are some issues that we have to consider as we move forward. Ross. His hand went up first.
We're going to have a new approved local day salmon management policy this year, or we're going to keep working with, excuse my name, with this bastardized approach, with interim measures and all this stuff. What we're just studying to get a new policy for 5 years in a row. That exceeds I got A's in English, that ain't in for 5 years, you know. But we're gonna have a new policy, is it gonna apply to this year or not?
I'll take that one. Ms. Brooker, thank you for your question. Hopefully you know that we are having an extra special commission meeting in May on Willapa Bay policy. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date, but mid-May. And it'll be, of course, broadcast. I believe there's public comment. And I think you know where we are. So we're kind of going through this process of alternative 4. And I think we're really close. So we're hoping that by the summer or fall, we will have a new Willapa Bay policy, but it probably isn't going to affect this season's fishing. Yeah.
You know, I mean, saying you kill 20% of the run, where the half the state boat doesn't cross the bar, makes 0 sense. There's no conservation involved in what we're doing. That's that's my opinion. Whatever it is, it's not conservation.
Yes, sir.
Like you're all, you're down saying about one of these. I can't even think about. So how accurate is they going to predict 9,750 fish? How accurate is this prediction? I've never seen you say, this year we predicted this many. I've never seen that.
That's a very good question, and I don't have anything that I could show you. But those certainly go into how we model each year. We look at historical performances of the models. And if we see that one method isn't doing very well, there's several things we can do, look for a different thing, or we can adjust these models based on how well they perform. So certainly there's a lot of variables out there.
Science training like that, like, oh, we got all the barrier. And you would never do what this probability up there. But what I'm asking is, what you have a feeling or how accurate you remember, is it 10% or 20% or 5% or what?
Yes.
What?
I kept pointing to the 2014 cohort return. Nobody predicted it.
Well, I understand.
So-
But how-
And the very next year,
How accurate everything?
I don't have the number in front of me, but
Yeah, we can get that though. So all of Mike's models have estimates of uncertainty. All of them. I mean, Mike does this every single year, and models that have high uncertainty are not our best performing models. So I think after this, we didn't come with like all these models in hand, but it feels like this is a conversation we can have afterward, so you can see what the level of uncertainty is around forecast.
just in general,
That's a good question. It's fair. Yeah, it's a good question.
we've been pretty close recently, particularly with Chanel.
Every year I have.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody, take a look at it, and I just can't find the time to look at it. But in that is a forecasting out there, and you'll have the numbers, and also have the graph, which shows forecasted action, and so year by year, they provide the information that. If anybody wants it, when I get it, I can send you an email address. You'll send it to you. Does it every year, it doesn't hide. It's right there for you.
Yeah, and if you guys find mistakes in it, please let me know. These are pretty cumbersome, big models.
We have some that just don't perform well and others that perform really well. So you can imagine like pink salmon are really hard to predict. But some of these populations like Chinook that Mike's been watching for his career here, we're getting pretty good at it. But yeah, we should share all that stuff. Yeah.
So we've had just a few more minutes, so I want to make sure we get everybody a chance to speak their mind or if they have any more questions. Yes,
If Jack Salmon don't get on an escapement and all that, how come the guy got punch one?
because we need to know the information. Jack's,
Is there
Jack's,
some way that we could have over, let's say you go fishing on the Chehalis thing, right? 3, whatever the number is for the Chehalis. An old whale on her bike where you got hatchery and wild. You catch 3 of each, you put 3 in this hatchery box and 3 in the wild box.
so you're using up lines for your jacks on your punch card, right?
Right.
So can we make an adjustment to the catch record card so you don't have to use so many lines up for your jacks? So that's a good suggestion.
So you can put over in that little box where it says wild and hatchery, where you just put the number you catch each day, and usually fish the same river. If you go to different rivers and you use another one.
We'll bring it up with the statewide salmon manager.
I still go back to when I was there. I do not understand why we got it. If you're in Oregon, they don't care because we don't have a wheel. I mean, but why is it six fish? Jack, and then you can have them go and I'm trying to go. Other than selling more punch cards to the jack fishing, which we do, they're really good. It strikes me as.
I see some biological importance to jacks
Yeah.
in the long.
Through 6,000 and then they got a whole.
So we've learned since you threw those in the hole, and we've evolved a little bit. So
3,000 jack.
I will say jacks do contribute to future generations.
Yeah,
Well, they also help us with fishery management. I mean, there's a benefit in having a limit to the number of fish you can encounter. When we encounter 70 jacks, hook and line, you also encounter other fish that are there. So for us, the 6 statewide jack rule makes sense, but if there's a specific proposal for a specific river where you think you can get your 6 jack limit and then you wish you got 4 more, we should hear it. We should keep it on the list. So yeah, bring those forward and we'll keep talking about them. I'll just say, since there's sort of awkward silence, I really appreciate everybody showing up. This is our first shot at a post-COVID in person. We were wondering, do we cookies and coffee or do we not? So I think as these move forward, the in-person ones, and we're getting sort of back on our feet, and if folks have suggestions how to make it more comfortable. I think Mark ran this one for us and it didn't fail. I feel good about it. So thanks, Mark, and everybody.
Thankfully, we don't know what went on. It's
So it is
cyberspace.
recorded. It should be available online for people who didn't get a chance to listen in or participate. The conversation should be available on the website in the next couple of days.
so I know we have almost raised ones, meetings in person.
Why don't we?
I know, yeah.
Well, we have people who feel the flip side. So if we have things in person, then people at home that would prefer to be on Zoom or wish it were the other way around. And we also have limited IT capacity, which is one reason why we couldn't have at home participation this evening. So we are really busy. Our IT people are moving back and forth throughout the whole North of Falcon season and going to commission meetings. And so we just don't really have that capacity.
Working on it though.
Yeah, working on it.
I was just talking, one more time. The handicap access. There's so when you guys make decisions, you're not. If you look along and you really want to go, then you want to play. And that's the way you go. And you got people who want to start some language. They're different. They don't have the mobility, access and things that they don't. We do. And we need to figure out who is getting everybody to hold. All of the literacy. I don't understand it's not. I could run around. I know pieces of forming that are in the community. They don't get this one. That's good.
So I'll speak for all of us. No argument there. We appreciate it. We hear it, and it'll be taken into account every rule we make. So yeah, thanks for saying it. It's important.
If we don't keep saying, keep living acting, you can't go to the better side of what we say. Now you're taking bites out of the reservation. So that's why we like it.
Yeah, well, we're a team here. We're all making these decisions together. So yeah, thanks for the feedback, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody at home too. Have a good night.
Thank you all hard work you do.